people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
I think her overall performance, if I had to give her a grade, I give her a D+. Because the first 2 rounds, if anybody sit here and tell me that they thought that the first 2 rounds of her fight was entertaining, they're lying. That is not, you would not want to watch how that fight was going in round 1 and round 2. You wouldn't want to watch that for 10 rounds. They were both sluggish. They were both missing with punches. Femke was making her miss. She was making Femke miss. Femke was hitting her with crazy shots. She wasn't even really able to land on Femke. She had her hands down doing all kind of weird stuff. And then 3rd round, Peter told her to go in there, put your hands up, walk her down and land some shots and impose your will. And she did that, and she was able to catch Femke with her chin up, just as I was a few years ago. And Femke went down off of that. But the first 2 rounds just was not... it showed me everything that I need to see. And then when she hit Femke with the hook, it also showed me what I need to see also. But if you want to say she got knockout power, sure. But she can land that same punch on me, and I can guarantee you that I won't be going to the canvas.
And when I hear Clarissa Shields' comments in reference to this past Saturday's fight, I often ask myself,
Is she for real?
is she being serious? Is she being honest?
The fight lasted 3 rounds.
The first round, that was a feel-out round where neither fighter was committing to their shots. Neither fighter was committing to their punches. It only took 2 rounds for Savannah Marshall to start landing flush, landing hard.
She got through with a few straight shots that you could see hurt Femke Hermans.
You could see that in the 2nd round, right before she dispatched Femke in the 3rd.
Clarissa gives Savannah Marshall's performance a D.
A D for dispatching Femke Hermans in 3 rounds, where it took Clarissa 10
rounds?
10 rounds to secure the W against a fighter that Savannah dispatched in 3.
That's a D-class performance in your opinion.
D. She says based on the first 2 rounds of the fight, devoid of the highlight reel knockout, people weren't entertained with what they saw. Well, I think a lot of those people that were there, I think they'd beg to differ.
They would.
I think they disagree as far as the entertainment value of a Savannah Marshall fight.
I was entertained.
Not that Clarissa Shields takes my opinion into account or gives a rat's very fucking ass what I think, but for what it's worth, I was entertained with the fight. Devastating knockout. Who doesn't like one of those?
She says if Savannah lands on her the way she landed on Femke, she wouldn't go down.
Even though she was set on her back pocket by a junior middleweight that moved up to middleweight for a fight with her. Hannah Gabriels. We've referenced it endlessly here on the channel, and this is what I mean. I don't know, based on these responses, whether or not Clarissa's just selling the fight and playing the heel. I don't know whether or not she's being serious. How could she be?
He's saying knocking out Femke in 3 rounds, who's never been knocked out.
Knocking her out in 3 rounds gets Savannah Marshall a D.
But you waltzing with her for 10 rounds. 10 rounds. 3 times as many rounds plus 1.
That gets you an A. I mean, I think we're reaching the point to where Clarissa Shields is either in denial, deep denial, about Savannah Marshall's firepower, what she can do, and what happens when she lands clean on these girls. I think either Clarissa Shields is in denial, deep denial, or she's just playing the heel in order to sell the fight. Your guess is as good as mine. But what I can say is these anecdotes, these annotations in her evaluation, if that's what you want to call this.
It doesn't even feel like she's evaluating Savannah as an opponent.
Matchroom impresario and all-around good guy Eddie Hearn stated, I don't see how Clarissa Shields beats Savannah Marshall. I just feel that the momentum right now is with Savannah Marshall. Clarissa Shields, in my opinion, doesn't have the power to beat Savannah Marshall. Can she outbox her? Not really. Tony Bellier stated, I'm not gonna lie, I'm torn. I do believe Clarissa is gonna have to get off the floor if she is to win. I also believe Savannah is gonna have to show us something we haven't seen her do before. Also,
There's a growing number of people out there, they don't think Clarissa's got enough power to keep Savannah off her.
but I'll tell you what I think, I felt for some time that Savannah Marshall's power is not the byproduct of matchmaking, The power is real. And I believe that time has proven me right. Though power in it of itself does not secure the W. It doesn't secure the victory. Power means nothing if you can't land.
It's not a question of whether or not Savannah Marshall has enough power to knock out Clarissa. She does.
It's not a question of that, though. It's a question of whether or not Savannah Marshall can deliver enough of that power to hurt Clarissa and take her out.
I mean, I think, call me crazy, Clarissa Shields is a little harder to hit than Femke Hermans.
With better head movement, keeping that head off center, not being static. Does Savannah Marshall then have the ring savvy, the ring IQ to say, jab at Clarissa's chest if her head is too hard to hit, too hard to find, with the lead hand, with the jab out of either the orthodox or southpaw stances?
You target the torso as opposed to the head because the head's a smaller target.
So you target the torso instead. You either jab at the chest or stick a jab out there to the body, to step into it, get in position, to bring over something big, something major, something that might actually hurt her. Maybe you punch her in the arms.
Listen, 9 times out of 10, what the boxer wants to do is slow down the fight.
A finesse-fighting, cerebral kind of fighter like Clarissa Shields. They want to work off the counter to get the other girl's respect to some degree. Work off the counter enough to where the other girl is hesitant to throw, stops committing to their shots, at which point they take over.
So in the beginning, what they want to do is slow down the fight.
Which means you've got to do is the opposite. The more you throw, the more you put out there, the greater your chances of landing big, landing something major, something that could hurt Clarissa Shields, put her in an uncomfortable position, an uncomfortable place. I mean, how many fighters out there have actually backed Clarissa Shields off by taking the fight to her?
Many fighters, and how many fighters had enough power where they can hurt her?
Not many, if any, and a lot of fighters mentally checked out.
They either succumbed to exhaustion or stopped trying because they couldn't keep up.
Those girls couldn't punch the way that Savannah Marshall can punch. And the more Savannah throws, the greater her chances of landing something big. She can't let the speed bother her if she is to take Clarissa Shields out. That's the main thing. That's what I mean when I say that. Power means nothing if you can't land. You've got to go for the gusto. You've got to throw.
Clarissa's not going to make herself available to Savannah.
She's defensively responsible. She's not going to give you very many openings. She's not going to give you anything, really. You've got to go out there and
Take her.
The reason that Na Gabriels of Costa Rica was able to knock down Clarissa Shields is because she wasn't waiting on her turn to throw. She wasn't punching in sequence. She was punching with Clarissa.
She wasn't afraid to.
Savannah Marshall has to be willing to do the same, and I'd wager that if Savannah Marshall lands on Clarissa Shields the way Haney Gabriels did, Clarissa don't get off the deck.
She gets put down, and she stays down.
Men's lightweight news ahead of what is to be Gervonta Davis' showdown with his rival, Rolly Romero. He took to social media where a guy who goes by the name Brandon Ray stated, Kambosos and Haney are fighting for undisputed. No one cares about the WBA second place regular belt, referencing Gervonta Davis' secondary title of George Kambosos' primary.
Wait, didn't the WBA say they were going to phase those belts out?
That they did. To which Gervonta Davis himself responded, and both of them together still won't get paid as much as me, but will be paying out more than me, though.
What's he talking about, sanctioning fees?
Sounds a lot like he is. Every one of those alphabet titles comes with a sanctioning fee. You gotta pay to play, that's the way it is.
So if you're really a cash cow, why would sanctioning fees bother you?
What, you're making so much money you're worried about the WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF taking a small percentage of your fight price? I mean, doesn't sound like your price is all that big.
Not if you're losing sleep over stuff like that.
He says that both of those guys, George Kambosos and Devin Haney, they're not going to make as much money with their fight as he is with his fight. I don't know that I believe that. Nobody's buzzing over Gervonta Davis versus Rolly Romero. I'm just being honest. While Gervonta Davis himself might have a small pocket of fans, a cult following as it were, Rolly Romero does not. Thus, bringing Rolly Romero and Gervonta Davis together, that don't make a super fight, a mega fight.
Rolly Romero doesn't have a fan base.
George Kambosos himself stated ringside tickets all sold out within 30 hours. All corporate suites sold out as well. They have now added more rows, 10 to 13 ringside due to demand. General admission out April 22nd. Biggest fight in Australian history. The roof on Marvel Stadium is about to be blown off. You'll notice the reaction to both respective fights. Haney versus Kambosos and Davis versus Romero. You'll notice that Kambosos versus Haney was in fact announced
After Davis versus Romero was announced.
Everybody already knew after that Isaac Cruz fight that provided that Rolly Romero can get his legal situation in order, in all likelihood his fight with Gervonta Davis would be rescheduled. In other words, we've known about Gervonta's next fight for some time, and it's not getting the same reaction here that Kambosos versus Haney is getting over there in the land down under.
Yet Gervonta claims he's gonna make all this money.
More money than George Kambosos Jr., more money than Devin Haney.
No, I don't know if I believe that. Their fight is a pay-per-view in Australia.
And at minimum, we know they have a foreign broadcast partner here in America by way of Top Rank and ESPN.
There's no sense pretending that Gervonta Davis's fight is in any way bigger than George Kambosos versus Devin Haney. It's not.
Rolly Romero himself stated that he thinks Haney versus Kambosos is bad for boxing.
In what fucking way would that fight be bad for boxing?
The guy's a fucking idiot.
About Devin Haney Kambosos, how does that end?
That's a joke, I'm sorry.
Why?
Just neither of them have power.
Devin says that's the fight the fans want, and that's the
fight that the fans are the fans lose.
What do you expect him to say?
Nobody gives a fuck about Rolly Romero.
What are we doing now? We're comparing which fight is a bigger, more important, more relevant fight to the division and the sport of boxing, an undisputed title fight between the two remaining champions at lightweight, or Gervonta Davis's defense of a secondary title against this
Nimrod.
moron. Gervonta Davis's claim to being this division's cash cow has always seemed to me all but an illusion, a production, smoke, mirrors intended to make Gervonta Davis seem like a bigger star than he actually is. I don't expect his upcoming fight with Rolly Romero to do as well commercially as, say, the Leo Santa Cruz fight did, because Rolly Romero doesn't have a following.
He's not known amongst casual boxing fans, and he's not thought of highly by hardcores.
Hardcore boxing fans, they think this guy's career is a joke.
Can you do well at the box office fighting a guy like this?
Why is he even fighting this guy? Oh, right. The WBA ordered him to take care of Rolly Romero to hang on to his WBA secondary title.
Wanted who to fight him, Gervonta?
The one and only, the guy gloating that he doesn't have to pay as many sanctioning fees as George Kambosos Jr. and Devin Haney for their fight, but he's paying sanctioning fees for a lesser version of George's title.
I mean, if the idea is that you're a big enough cash cow, you don't need to fight for a belt or belts, why are you defending that one?
Why the fuck are you fighting this guy?
Well, WBA ordered him to, that's one reason.
And yet another, at least in Gervonta Davis's own words, is that the people at the TMT, they want him to face Rolly Romero because this is the last fight of Gervonta Davis's existing contract with them. Talked about that here on the channel. More recently, he stated, "I don't know, but I don't care. I'm out of their hair when this shit is over, everybody."
We'll see where he goes.
If he goes anywhere, a departure from Mayweather Promotions as a promotional outfit doesn't necessarily mean it's a departure from Al Heyman's PBC. Perhaps Gervonta Davis will go into business with Tom Brown or go into business with the network independently. There's a lot of ways it could break down to where he isn't in bed with Leonard Ellerby anymore, but he's still in bed with Al Heyman.
The whole goddamn thing could be a publicity stunt to help draw attention to this fight.
Could very well be. I mean, what's the selling point for this thing? It's not a full-fledged title fight. We know there's only one full-fledged world title fight set to go down in the lightweight division in the near future, and that's the fight involving Devin Haney and George Kambosos. So this isn't a full-fledged title fight. This isn't based on Rolly Romero's momentum as a world title challenger. Nobody even knows who that guy is, and the ones that do
Think he's a retard.
Gervonta Davis himself, characteristically, he don't put up astronomical numbers, so I mean, really.
We're not gonna know if all this stuff about Gervonta leaving is for real until after the Romero fight is over.
Just in keeping with the theme of lightweight news, ahead of what is to be the George Kambosos Jr. versus Devin Haney undisputed lightweight title tilt, George says Haney's a good boxer, but he ain't elite. He'll find out the hard way. He's quoted as saying, "Look, I've been a contender on the rise for a long time before I won these titles. So I've been looking at all these guys. I've got notes on all of these guys. I know how to beat all of these guys, and I will continue to beat all of them, one by one, round by round, one by one. So look, I'm not going to disrespect Devin Haney. He's a good boxer, but he ain't elite. And he will find that out the hard way."
These comments from George are much to the chagrin of Devin's supporters.
There's a lot of people out there. They're sold on Devin already. They feel he's the second coming of Floyd Mayweather Jr.
There are those people.
And there are those who aren't as sold. They view Devin Haney's resume as being paper thin, his claim to being a champion tenuous at best. There are those people who are critical of Devin Haney, and they don't feel he's elite. They feel how George feels.
And if there weren't already a fight signed between them, this would be more of a conversation.
An argument to be had, though, because the fight is signed, sealed, and all but delivered. All we have left to do now is wait. There's no need to argue.
Melbourne, Australia at Marvel Stadium will be the proving ground.
For not just the fans, but the fighters themselves. they'll find out firsthand who's elite and who ain't. George Kambosos Jr. stated they call him the dream, but now that it's signed, reality's gonna kick in, Kambosos said. Day by day, that reality is gonna set in stone. You're gonna see it. This stadium, this fighter you've got in front of you, this ain't no game.
You could argue that George's single win over Teofimo Lopez is better than anything you'll find on Devin Haney's resume.
You could make that argument, though. You could also put that same win, that same victory over Teofimo Lopez under a microscope. Some people feel that his victory over Teofimo Lopez
Was a byproduct of a fight that took too long to get over the line.
Post-fight, Teofimo Lopez stated that he went into that fight with some air in his chest, some kind of a medical issue that could have perhaps hampered his ability to perform. I don't dismiss that possibility. I really don't.
I don't dismiss his father saying that they stayed at that weight too long.
Saying that was the mistake they made. I don't dismiss that because that's what I was saying leading up to that fight, that it's taking far too long for Teofimo to satisfy what was a simple IBF mandatory. It was consuming too much of that young champion's time. I don't dismiss any of this stuff, I don't, but I don't spend a lot of time on it either because the fight between George and Devin is done.
If George ain't the real thing, we're gonna find out.
And the same is true in reverse. The same is true of Devin. At this point, I ain't got a horse in the race.
I'm just happy the fight is done.
To further answer those questions that hang over the both of these young fighters' heads, to finally put an end to that franchise WBC world undisputed conversation, that
They
debate.
can say whatever they want to say about each other at this point. The fight is done.
And I don't get the sense that George Kambosos was at all apprehensive about facing Devin because he was about to go right into a more dangerous fight with a more dangerous fighter in Vasyl Lomachenko. Let's not forget how we got here. Initially, he signed on to fight that guy.
I can't stress that enough, no matter how much Devin Haney's fans don't want to hear this.
A Vasyl Lomachenko fight for George would have been a more dangerous fight because Vasyl Lomachenko stood a better chance of knocking him out, taking it out of the judge's hands. Whereas Devin's a quality boxer, quality operator, but he's no one-hitter quitter guy. He's no knockout artist.
I think that George Kambosos is riding high.
Coming right off of his big upset win over Teofimo Lopez, I think he has a mental edge, having fought on a somewhat bigger stage than Devin Haney has ever fought on, that Teofimo Lopez fight.
George seems pretty confident to me.
He seems more maturated than Devin. That's not saying that Devin seems immature so much as George has got a couple of years on this kid. George Kambosos is 28, whereas Devin is a very spry 23 years old.
He's coming off a career best win. He's having it all his way.
Fight set to go down in his backyard, even if he loses the first fight. He's got that kind of leverage in the situation. I think George has a mental edge.
That might help to explain these bold proclamations that he's making.
He's very confident, seems very confident. I've got no horse in the race. I'm just happy the fight is made.
So let's see if Devin can make George eat those words.